Well, over the next half an hour, we'll tell you about a classic case of how Indian diplomacy delivers. Aqua Titan, a vessel carrying Russian crude oil, has arrived in India. The oil, in fact, will be offloaded at the Mangaluru coast later today. But notably, the Russian oil tanker was headed to China, but reversed course in South China Sea, designating India as the new destination. This follows US issuing a month-long waiver to allow the sale of the Russian crude oil, which is stranded at the sea. Now, that is one of the conditions, and the aim is to stabilize the global fuel prices amid the conflict in the Middle East. So that's the latest on your screen. In fact, the exclusive visuals of Aqua Titan, a vessel that is carrying the crude oil, that has now arrived in the country. And this is a classic case of how Indian diplomacy works, because in the last few days, ever since the war has started, Indian Prime Minister, Indian Foreign Affairs Minister has been in constant touch with Iranian authorities as far as the safe passage of vessels, Indian vessels, through the Strait of Hormuz is concerned. That's an area, that's a key waterway that has been blocked by Iran. But as far as India is concerned, through diplomacy, we have ensured that our vessels are safe, and we continue to get the LPG, the LNG and the crude oil supply here in the country. And in the latest, as you can see on the screen, Aqua Titan, a vessel carrying Russian crude oil, has arrived in the country. The oil will be offloaded, we're learning later today. And this is the Russian tanker. Most importantly, it was headed to China. It started the journey on January 18th. It was going towards China, but then it reversed the course in South China Sea. And the reason behind is that US has now in fact waived the sale. There is a month-long waiver to allow the sale of the Russian crude oil that is only stranded at the sea. So we are going to be taking up that crude oil, and this is quite important as far as the situation and the global energy crisis are also concerned. Well, these are the exclusive shots, the visuals on your screen of Aqua Titan, a vessel carrying Russian crude oil that has arrived in the country. Remember, this is the fourth vessel to arrive in the country. The first one, remember, was on March 16. It was a Shivalik vessel. The other one was Jug Ladki and Nanda Devi as well. These were the vessels carrying LPG and crude oil as well. And now this is the fourth one, the one that you can see on the screen, and the exclusive visuals on your screen that we have access of the vessel. The name of the vessel is Aqua Titan, that is carrying Russian crude oil that has now arrived in the country, and the oil, we are learning, will be offloaded at the Mangaluru coast later today. And this is the Russian tanker that was headed to China, but it reversed the course in South China Sea and has now arrived in the country. All this after a month-long waiver was given by the United States on the Russian oil, and not just on the Russian oil, but also on Iranian oil. On that, let me go across to our consulting editor, Srinjoy Chaudhary. Good morning, Srinjoy. Many are saying that this is a big diplomatic win for the country, because in the last few days, Prime Minister has been in touch with the Iranian president. Our External Affairs Minister has been in touch with the counterpart to ensure one thing, and that is that our vessels, as far as the Strait of Hormuz, the key waterway, is concerned, they are safe.
It's much easier to send oil to China from Russia, because surely they have a border, a long land border, and a pipeline can do the work. But to send oil to India, crude oil to India, quite naturally you will need a ship, and that is possibly why this huge vessel with so much crude oil has just got to India. Now this is going to be very useful, very helpful, because at this point, with the situation at the Straits of Hormuz being what it is, all the oil that India can get will be useful. Because at this point, whether it's oil, whether it's LNG, and also because the Americans have made it clear that any Indian private sector firm or India can buy Russian oil. India is buying Russian oil in any case, because India doesn't have to wait for permission from anyone to buy oil from any country. But now it's easier because the Russian vessels can come straight into an Indian port, and this 7 lakhs of oil was actually very necessary.
Is very important for the country and a big diplomatic win as well. But Shinjoy, do tell us about this particular vessel in question that is carrying crude oil, Aqua Titan, that is now arrived in the country. Do tell us more about this particular vessel.
The Russians were initially sending this ship to the Chinese, but halfway through they realized that perhaps it would be easier, better to send it to India. Because as I said, if you have a long boundary, you can have a pipeline. You can send petroleum more easily than from Russia to India, which is why this ship particularly was rerouted. Initially, it was supposed to go to China. Then it was decided maybe India would be a better choice, and it's just got to Indian ports, and all that petroleum will be very, very useful.
Absolutely. Stay on with us. In fact, Shinjoy, those are the visuals on your screen, exclusive visuals that we have accessed here on Times Now of Aqua Titan, a vessel that is carrying the crude oil that has arrived in the country. As my colleague also mentioned, it was headed towards China, but it was perhaps easier to come to India with the crude oil. But despite the tense situation, in the last few days, 3 Indian flagged vessels have successfully navigated through the Strait of Hormuz, a route, a key waterway that is currently blocked. Let us tell you about the 3 arrivals that are being seen as a direct outcome of India's diplomatic engagement with Iran and the conversation that the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister have been having with the Iranian authorities. The first one to arrive, remember, was on March 16. This was Shivalik vessel that arrived at Mundra port there in Gujarat, carrying 40,000 metric ton of the LPG. So that was the first vessel to arrive in the country amid the escalating war that we're witnessing in West Asia. The second one was the very next day, that is March 17, that also arrived at Vadinar port in Gujarat, carrying 46,500 metric ton of the LPG. The second one to arrive, and the third one was Jagladki on March 18th, carrying 80,866 metric ton of the crude oil, the first vessel carrying the crude oil that arrived in the country. And now, late last night, we're learning that Aqua Titan has arrived at the Mangaluru port carrying 1.1 lakh tons of, in fact, the crude oil. And we are showing the visuals on your screen. Our reporter is there on the ground getting you the latest visuals of what is really happening there at the Mangaluru airport, where this vessel has now arrived. And those, look at the visuals on your screen of the vessel carrying 1.1 lakh ton, metric ton of the crude oil that has now arrived in the country. And this is all a direct outcome of India's diplomatic engagement with Iran. The conversation that Prime Minister has been having with the Iranian President and External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Shankar, has been having with his counterpart there in Iran. And in that backdrop, now we can see that many of the vessels have arrived in the last more than 10 days. The first one being Shivalik, and now there on the screen, the 4th vessel to arrive in the country, that is Aqua Titan, carrying crude oil as well. In fact, media reports also suggest that the Iranian Navy last week guided an Indian LPG tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. That's a key waterway that has been blocked. And according to the reports, the tanker was one of the 2 Indian ships allowed to make the sensitive crossing on the pre-approved route following India's diplomatic engagement. Reports also stated that during the transit, the vessel remained in radio contact with the Iranian Navy, which collected detailed information, including the ship's flag, the name, origin, destination, and the crew nationality as well. And just last week, Iran's Deputy Ambassador to India said that the Strait of Hormuz is open only to the countries that are friend to the nation, and one of the friendly nation is India. It is close to all the enemy nation, and hence we are witnessing that as far as the United States are concerned, all their vessels are currently stuck there. The hotline diplomacy is in full swing amid the heat of the Middle East war. Prime Minister spoke with the Iranian President just yesterday, a few hours back, this being their second direct exchange since the war broke out on Feb 28th, 3 weeks back. Prime Minister condemned the attack on the critical infra in the region, which threatened the regional stability and disrupt the global supply chain as well. He also said that there should be importance of safeguarding the freedom of navigation, ensuring that the shipping lanes remain open and secure, alluding to the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. Separately, S. Jaishankar, who's the External Affairs Minister, also spoke with his Iranian counterpart, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, to discuss the conflict in West Asia and its implication for the broader region. So as far as India is concerned, we have been in constant touch with Iranian authorities in the last few weeks, and in that backdrop, we can see that several of the Indian ships have been able to cross that key waterway that has been blocked by Iran. But very important to mention here as well that US has waived in fact, the sanction as far as sale of Russian and Iranian oil is also concerned, and hence we can see that a vessel from Russia carrying the crude oil has now arrived in the country. On that, let me once again bring in my colleague Srinjoy. Srinjoy, tell us more about the waiver on the Russian and the Iranian oil that is currently in place, and hence we are able to get the oil from Russia. Do take our viewers through the decision that has been taken by US as far as waiving and unsanctioning of the sanctioned Russian and Iranian oil is concerned.
With the Russians, it had happened earlier. And you can understand that because President Putin and President Trump know each other. They've worked together. They've had meetings together. So regardless of whatever the situation is, you could expect that to happen, that any country would be able to buy Russian oil for that 1 month. So that is understandable. And with the Iranians, it's an unusual tactical measure, because what happens is that the price of oil comes down as a result of this. Now, very rarely has a country suggested to its enemy, the country it is fighting, that look here, you can sell your oil in the world markets, we won't torpedo your tankers. Now, this is a first in many ways, and it's a tactical move clearly to ensure that the price of petroleum stays down, is nudged lower, because it has shot up because of the war from $70-ish a barrel to over $110 a barrel. Now, there is a hope among the Americans who want to keep the oil prices down, because a lot of domestic sentiment is involved, that if the Russian oil is available in the world market, if even the Iranian oil is available in the world market, oil prices, gasoline prices in the United States will also stay low. But so far, there is a fear in the United States that gasoline prices will cross $5 a gallon. And if that happens, it's politically detrimental for President Trump.
Absolutely, and there is a global energy crisis, but India, as far as the Indian government is concerned, they have maintained that there is nothing to worry about. In that backdrop, we are also witnessing that vessels after vessels carrying crude oil, LPG, they have already started arriving in the country. Stay on with us, Srinjoy. We have another breaking update coming in. Another vessel, the fifth vessel carrying the LPG, in fact, the fifth vessel overall, and the third one carrying LPG has arrived in the country. And this one has come from Texas in the United States. It has arrived in Karnataka at New Mangaluru port, and the visuals are on your screen. These are the latest visuals of another vessel that has arrived in the country. This one is, in fact, carrying, we're learning, LPG. The first one being, remember, Shivalik, that had arrived on March 16, followed by Nanda Devi the very next day. And another vessel that here you can see on the screen, the fifth vessel that has arrived in the country, the third one to carry LPG to the country. Very important, a diplomatic win, because for India, as Iran has also said that the waterway, that is the Strait of Hormuz, is only open for the friends of Iran. And hence we are witnessing that many of the vessels belonging to India have already come here, or they have brought in the crude oil or LPG as well. For more on this, let me go across to my colleague Srinjoy once again. Srinjoy, another ship carrying LPG has arrived in the country, and this one has come from Texas in United States. So very important to mention here is that, and it appears that India is trying to diversify its energy needs as well, not just relying on the Gulf countries at this point in time when the war is underway, but also relying on US, on Australia, on Russia as well.
First of all, the Americans have supplied India with petroleum in the past, and India gets a lot of petroleum from the Americans. So it's nothing new that America is sending petroleum products, whether it's LNG, whether it's crude oil, to India. And they are welcome. Of course, India imports crude oil from America. The other thing is there are countries which have just signed agreements with India, Canada being one. And Canada can supply LNG and petroleum to India. Yes, you're right, very right, that it's important to diversify, because at this point, no one knows what's going to happen in the Gulf and for how long. So if you need your petroleum, you need it from America, you need it from Canada, you need it from other parts of the world where petroleum is easily available, because it's absolutely crucial that India gets its supplies. Already prices of petroleum have gone up, and that will affect India in any case. But at least if there is a lot of LNG, then at least domestically, consumers are not affected, shops are not affected, restaurants are not affected. All this has to be ensured. So a suitable supply of LNG is absolutely necessary, and this ship that's come from Texas will help as far as supplies are concerned.
Absolutely. In fact, 5 vessels in total, they have crossed the Strait of Hormuz and have arrived in the country carrying LPG and crude oil as well. Thanks so much, Ranjoy, for getting us all those details. We'll keep